Hey everybody, welcome to your readings for this week. These are the readings for the week ending December 10th. Lots of stuff going on this week. So let's just jump into it. And we're going to start with Darcy. Hi, Darcy. Well, we're gonna kick off the week with the moon in Taurus, which is yay, especially on Monday when the moon moves into conjunction with Uranus in your sign, joining that square with Saturn. The moon and Uranus's focus is on the past, and Saturn's focus is on the inner closet. So this definitely tells me that triggers are going to be coming up, and with the moon involved, they could be very deeply emotional triggers, if that makes sense. I feel it's important with triggers, which usually stem from a situation that triggers a feeling from a past situation. And what happens when that happens is the fear of what you're feeling sort of forces you to react in such a way to attack, to make it stop, to get away from. And they're all like extreme reactions in some way, shape, or form. And that's why it's important that we don't let our triggers, the emotions or the feelings of our triggers, get the best of us, because usually it's in a situation where that's just not appropriate. We're not dealing with the person that created that problem. We're dealing with somebody who has absolutely nothing to do with it. What they're doing is mimicking something that somebody else did, kind of a thing. So it is a little bit different. It is challenging. At the same time, you can always separate what is a trigger from something else versus what is going on right now. And when you do that separation, then now you're only dealing with frustration over the current situation and not necessarily the trigger of something that happened before. I absolutely agree that when triggers come up, it's because this is a root that needs to be worked on and you should work on it. But I don't agree with working on it in the moment if you can't. So, I tend to kind of sort of put it aside until later, and then later on when I'm by myself, I deal with the trigger and why this feeling keeps being a trigger, to kind of promote healing and moving past that trigger as much as you can anyway. So, not the most fun thing in the world to share with you, unfortunately. I wish it was different, but it's not. So it is what it is. I know that you'll pull through it and everything is going to be okay. I also kind of feel like you've been having to deal with this a lot. Maybe it's from a particular individual that just something about the individual that triggers a lot, or there's it's something that seems to be causing these triggers a lot. So it really is important that you take the time when you have it to explore the trigger. In my experience, nobody enjoys it. It's not like, oh, I get to explore my triggers, yay. No, nobody does that. Okay. And it is a very difficult process and a very emotional process. But once you get to the other side of it, it can be a very freeing process also. And I feel like you need to do this. You have done something like this before. It's been nagging at you, so you need to listen, I think, is where we're going with that. So that's what I have for you, Darcy. And we're going to move on to Connie. Luckily, The moon does not quite make it to Leo this week. It's going to next week, though, and it is going to be a bit of a hoo-ha for you. I already know. I did the horoscopes for next week just before I did this reading. So you should just enjoy things being a little bit calmer without that influence. We do have the dark moon's influence just starting to infiltrate into your sign currently right now. Leo's focus is on your schedule, your day-to-day schedule. The dark moon brings those you love into focus with that as well. We just talked yesterday actually about things slowing down a bit, which is good. It gives you time to focus on your dad. So we're kind of in line with that, which is really good. However, as we get towards the end of the week, because we almost start off the week with the moon in your sign next week, you're going to start to feel that influence sort of moving closer and closer, specifically around Saturday. And if any kind of pardon me, family drama is going to come up, that's when it's going to come up, unfortunately. And the moon spearheading that, it of course means that it's going to be emotional, and as usual, right? But that just almost guarantees that it's going to be a bit emotional for you. So there is that. Outside of that, though, I feel like I know we talked yesterday, and I did see you have an empty schedule next week, but I do see a couple that pop on your schedule. One kind of in the beginning of the week, one kind of towards the end of the week, so they're not necessarily on the same day. And those empty days are really good days to get some other things done, just ticked off that list, if that makes sense. And I really feel that it is very important. I know we talked about this yesterday. I'm gonna hammer it in now so that you remember, but it's a good idea to create a schedule around getting those things done. And I sort of see one day as a personal business day, maybe bleeding into a second day, but then I do see one day that's really good for being dedicated to getting paperwork taken care of, and all those types of things, in terms of work things. So I think my main concern about it is to be very, I think you should schedule in a lazy day. If that makes sense. For me personally, knowing when my lazy day is, it helps me to work towards that day. So I may be really tired and just want to be lazy today, but I have a lazy day coming up in a couple of days, so I should probably get stuff done. That way I can really enjoy my lazy day. It's just a way for me to give myself what I want without overdoing it as well, which I am very capable of doing if I don't pay attention to what I'm doing, which is why my lazy day is literally on the schedule. So I can work towards that day. And then I just enjoy it so much more, knowing that I got so many things accomplished. I don't really know why that is, but the rest is always better after you've gotten everything done. So that is what I have for you, my dear. Moving on to Jenny. Hi, Jenny. Nothing happening in Leo. The moon is so close to moving into Leo at the end of the week. You will probably feel its effects a little bit on Saturday, but doesn't officially move into Leo until next week. And it is going to be a bit of a woozy when it does. So just be prepared for that. Focus is on your day-to-day schedule this week. the dark moon is actually just popped into Leo to influence Leo and bring those you love into that schedule focus as well. So I feel like this week there's going to be, it just sort of seems like it's one of those weeks where you have your work schedule, but you also have to schedule some extra time with your girls, or helping them with projects or their doctor appointments or something. I mean, I don't see anything major. It's fairly routine. It's just one of those things that when you're a parent you have to be in two places at once, and that's kind of the feeling that I get from that. As the moon moves towards closer and closer to Leo at the end of the week, you probably will start to feel those effects, as well as the moon moves into opposition with Pluto. That opposition with Pluto, the moon's again bringing those you love focus in there, in opposition with the house of those that love you, so your support system. So this sort of just creates this feeling of, I'm spreading my love and support out to everybody, but when it comes down to it and I need support, nobody's there. I kind of get a sense of, it's not the person you think is supposed to be there that's there, but somebody is there, if that makes sense. And I feel like it's supposed to be that way for a reason. So just go with it. This is the best thing that I can say about that. Interesting with the dark moon's influence also, I just kind of want to pop in and add this. The dark moon is really all about change. Leo's a fixed sign, so Leos are not like woohoo and shit about change necessarily. In fact, having a routine makes things a lot easier. So with that influence directed towards those you love, I feel that it's less about changes that you're making and more about changes that are taking place around a particular individual or somebody around you that may be affecting you, even if it's just affecting you emotionally. And the example that I can come up with is, as you see your kids get older and start getting interested in newer, different, older kid things that can emotionally take it out of you. So that's what I have for you, Jenny, and a big hug. Okay, we're going to move on to Linda. Missing a name on there. Weird. Linda. No moon in Virgo this week. We will be having it next week, so just enjoy not having it this week. Okay, we're just going to leave it at that. Focus is on relationships. We continue to have Ceres influence in that realm. Also, we've been talking about Ceres for a while now, because Ceres has been in there for a minute anyways. Will still be there next week, but I feel is starting to move out in moving into Libra the week after that. Not sure when the retrogrades are for the smaller planets, so it could go retrograde and come back. I really haven't looked that far ahead, so I don't know. We'll just focus on this week instead. Ceres is known as the Great Mother, so the word nurturing comes up a lot around Ceres to me. In some cases, it's where you need to nurture yourself. We're focused on relationships, so I would take this more as nurturing relationships. And you would think that we would direct that towards the family, and of course you should. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I kind of feel like this is being more directed towards your professional relationships in a way. And the word nurturing, actually, I am right now thinking of a time where we met for lunch. I have no clue where. Some little town out in the middle of nowhere for whatever reason. I can't remember, but we were talking about birthing new ideas, and you were saying that your belly looked pregnant, and you were saying, I don't know what this baby is, kind of a thing. And I feel that if you're not growing a baby or the seeds of a new thing, that maybe it has to do with relationships within your businesses and some of the difficult relationships needing to be nurtured rather than fixed, if that makes sense. This will help clear things to be able to birth all the babies you want. And I mean, in all honesty, I can see you birthing a whole lot of babies in terms of ideas and getting things set up. And you're like a hound dog on the trail of something right now. I have no clue what it is, but it's like right there. You can almost touch it. It's the only way that I can describe it. It's very exciting. I see your whole entire face just lighting up because of it. And if I'm not mistaken, we'll be talking about it this week too. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that is. And that's it. That's all I have for you, Linda. I will talk to you later on Friday, hopefully. Moving on to Maddie, my little Maddie boo. Nothing in Virgo this week. The moon moves into Virgo next week. It's going to be a chaotic mess. Let's just leave that into next week and not worry about that. This week, we don't have to deal with that. We do continue to have Ceres influence, and we are influencing relationships this week. So focus is on your relationships, and it's actually right now a pretty big focus. I'll explain in more detail later, but when you're looking at, pardon me, the zodiac, the houses get bigger and smaller throughout the year to compensate for the fact that the days get longer and shorter throughout the year, because the Western zodiac is based on what season we're in. So with that being said, it's also influenced, which is kind of cool, but the closer you are to the poles, the bigger they get, depending on whether it's all daytime or all dark nighttime. I've seen some pretty crazy charts because that are really close to up in Alaska and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. Anyways, my point is that the relationship focus is a pretty big focus right now, which means you're probably going to be focused on it for several weeks before it moves into a different focus. Ceres is a dwarf planet, which means that she has an influence, but it's not as strong of an influence as it would be if she was a more major planet. She doesn't interact with the other planets quite in the same way as the major planets, but the influences are still pretty strong. And being the great mother, really, it comes down to nurturing in many ways. I feel that is the word that she is promoting at this time. It's the word that keeps coming up over and over again in all of my horoscopes. So I feel like what that means is looking at the relationships that you have with the people around you, specifically the closest ones, and see where you can nurture those relationships. Now, I have to say, it's hard to say, okay. You're young, and God, I wish I could be young like you again. It was so much fun. But I also remember how incredibly stupid I really truly was. And I didn't think I was at the time, but I was ridiculously stupid and let a lot of things sort of fall apart that didn't need to, because I thought I had plenty of time to fix it, if that makes any sense at all. And I hope it does. So with that being said, we tend to get really focused on certain relationships and not think about other relationships. And with what you went through, losing your grandmother, the beginning of the year, that was unfortunately one of those really huge examples of where if you're not nurturing a relationship every day, there could come a time when you leave the relationship with a question mark, or things that should have been said that weren't said, or things that were said that shouldn't have been said. And the biggest thing that we can do with a situation like that is to learn from it and make sure that that doesn't happen again. With that being said, we all don't get along with other people. We can love somebody, and I feel like the more you love somebody, the more difficult the relationship really can be, the more feelings are involved in the relationship. So I kind of feel like where this is going for you is that it's important, if you're looking around and feeling a relationship is being difficult, it's not what you want out of the relationship. Your job is to find a way to nurture the relationship to see if that's going to help promote the change that you want within the relationship, if that makes sense. And nurturing is just loving, it's just giving that person love in whatever way, shape, or form you choose to do that. I feel, knowing you as long as I've known you, that you have always done that in very personal ways, and that you've always done that. You're always just kind of there to lend a helping hand, or I kind of am thinking about when Dave's grandma fell in love with you when you were little and wanted to keep you because we didn't have any adorable little girls. But she fell in love with you because you ran right up to her and held her hand when she was walking down the stairs so she wouldn't fall, and you were very attentive to her and asked her if she needed anything, and you were just such a little girl doing this because you had great grandparents at home and you knew exactly how that was supposed to be, and you've always been a nurturing person. And I feel like a lot of times, when children grow up, at least this is how it was for me, a lot of those traits died as a teenager when I was influenced by all this other ridiculousness that was going on around me, and you get very easily distracted and sucked into that ridiculousness. But you don't really do that. You have, and then you see it for what it is, and then you go, no, that's not where I want to focus my energy. And that may seem a little weird, like you're a little, what the hell is wrong with her? But you're not weird. You're just focused on what you need to be focused on. So if you can do that, then you can approach anybody with love and an open heart. I feel like I don't even know what I just said in any of this. So I hope all of it makes sense to you, or some of it makes sense to you, or whatever. I love you. That's all that matters. And that's what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa. No planets influencing Libra this week. Focus will continue to be on finances for the remainder. I think this is actually going to be it. Focus will be moving on from finances after this week. Focus on finances can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you're focusing on a bunch of money coming in and you have unlimited resources to spend on whatever you want, then focus on finances is great. If you are looking at all the bills that you have and trying to figure out where you're going to get the damn money to pay those bills, well, then it's not so great. I don't really see you in either way. I kind of see you just in the middle. Things are cool, things are secure, which is very important to you. I will say this, you've got to avoid as much as you can, because it's just going to happen. So you just have to stop it when it does. Of worrying about finding yourself back to financial worries. When you're, I think that as human beings, we work towards that security place for so long that when we get there, it's almost like it's going to fall apart any second. So, you just kind of have to hold on to it as long as you can, and we're worried about what's going to come along and knock us out of that security pedestal, if that makes sense. And you being a Libra and a woman and a mother, and all of those different things, I'm sure that that's always a thing. So basically, you just want to be aware that your mind isn't going to places that are making you crazier than you really need to be right now. It's time for you to enjoy it, basically. The other thing that I feel is coming up for you is a lot of old, I want to say old patterns. On one hand, you've been very strict on making sure that you're not following old patterns, especially within this new relationship, or in some cases, identifying where you might be falling into old patterns. Falling into old patterns isn't always a bad thing. It really depends on the circumstances. So make sure that you're aware of the circumstances also. For instance, being that person that's a caretaker is just part of who you are. Or it is who you are. It's not necessarily a bad habit, providing that you're doing this for somebody who's doing it back. So it's okay, right? This isn't falling into a bad pattern. Falling into a bad pattern would be you continuing to do this for somebody who's not doing it for you. That's a bad pattern. This is a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you are looking at these patterns for what they are, and allowing them to be in the relationship if they fit in the relationship. And of course, if it doesn't, then you want to try and eliminate that as much as possible. That's all I really have for you this week. I do see some time outside on the weekend, which is good. Of course, I also want to say I don't have to be a psychic to see that, because you do it like almost every single weekend. But I don't know, there's something a little bit different about this one. Like you found a new little hiding place, or something new to explore. So it's not one of your regular hangouts. It's something you've never seen before, been before, different energy, something like that. So that's what I have for you, my dear. Okay, I'm going to take a quickie break. And then when I come back, we will get the rest of these readings done. Okay, moving on to Regina. No planets in Scorpio this week, which we'll just keep it that way. Makes things a little bit easier. Focus is on long-term goals, specifically long-term financial goals. Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of, why does this always happen when I get to your reading? It's so weird. So weird. Okay. First of all, I'm not saying that you've never created financial goals before. I kind of feel like if you're going to do it, now it's going to be done in a completely different way, if that makes sense. I do see a lot of thoughts about how things aren't going to change and blah blah blah, and that kind of thinking is, well, it's just not helpful. It's not going to help you be successful, and I feel like you're at this stage where you're just tired of things the way they are, and if other people aren't going to make them change, then you're going to make them change, if that makes sense. Which is a feeling I very much resonate with right now. As a matter of fact, myself, being in a very similar situation, actually. And I think the thing that trips me up the most is trying to see what that looks like, and I just can't. And so because I can't, I just never really get there, right? I'm so focused on trying to control the outcome that I'm not even moving towards an outcome. And I kind of feel like this is part of what you're going through currently right now, and what you have gone through probably in the past. And well, I think that both of us just get over our crap and move on, right? So I'll go if you go. How about that? I also feel like there are certain things that you want to do and you want to get accomplished, and setting up financial goals in terms of how you're going to get the money, how much money you need to save every month to get there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is definitely going to be more helpful than putting it off until you have a lump sum of money at some point, which usually gets eaten up by something else that needs something every time. It's a vicious cycle. It really is. And not only is it exhausting, because it is, it's a very frustrating place to just continue to be. And it's sort of Neolithic, really. We're going back in our mindsets like 150 years to where if you were a peasant, you were a peasant. There's nothing you could do about it. And if you were rich, you were rich. And there's nothing you could do about that. And it's just not that way anymore. We can make little changes here and there to create all kinds of different opportunities for ourselves. So we just need to stop worrying about it and stop trying to figure out what it's going to look like and stop controlling it, and search for those opportunities and whatever it is that's going to help us get to where we want to get. So that's what I have for you this week. If you've been thinking about it, it's time to set it in motion and get it done. And if it doesn't work out, you haven't lost anything, and if it does, you've gained a lot. So that's that. Moving on to Theresa. No planets in Scorpio for you either, which also means that focuses on long-term financial goals for you this week. Couple of things come up with that, actually, because I do see a lot of, I continue to see a lot of sort of making plans, for how you're going to tie things up at the end of the year and what you want to get started for next year. So that's good. And I do see your financial goals as being a big part of that. Pardon me. But I'm also picking up on, it's kind of funny. I feel like you're going back and forth. And I feel like you're going back and forth on a purchase. Do I spend the money? Do I not spend the money? Do I spend the money? Do I not spend the money? If I spend the money, what happens if something comes up over here? But let me just say I'm leaning towards spending the money and leave it at that. For multiple reasons. I think the biggest reason, honestly, being that you deserve it. It's going to make your life easier. That right there makes it worth it. That makes sense. I think it's a no-brainer when you need to spend money on somebody that you love, but when it's something that you really want but you don't necessarily need, it can be challenging sometimes, that whole motherhood sacrifice thing always seems to get in the way for some reason. So that's one thing. The other thing I feel is I sort of pick up on somebody. I kind of feel it's a man. I don't think it's like a family member. I think this is more of a client type situation. This something about this man just rubs you the wrong way, and he's a big trigger. Like as soon as he opens his mouth, he's just this ginormous trigger. If that makes any sense at all. And it can be very hard to work with him, but I'm being told to tell you that you need to work him, if that makes sense. Um, Play his game against him in a way, not for manipulative purposes, but it'll help you, I think, be a little bit more successful with him, because I feel like he is this way on purpose. He's always trying to test people, and this may be a way to impress him. It'll piss him off, of course, too, but you're not gonna be able to get around that. But eventually, it'll impress him, and he'll be a little bit more open to what you have to say after that, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you, Theresa. Moving on to Amanda. We have an appointment on Tuesday. So that's kind of cool. Sun continues to be in Sagittarius. By the end of the week, Mercury and Venus will have moved out of Sagittarius, moving on into Capricorn. So no more influences there. The sun's focus is right in the middle of your long-term goals and your career. So I'm going to look at this as focus really is on your long-term career goals, very specifically this week. And the sun continues to be in a T square with Neptune as well as Mars for the rest of this week as well. In fact, the moon actually is part of this T square when it's in conjunction with Mars on Wednesday. So right in the middle of the week, actually. And of course, the moon is just going to add an emotional layer to everything that's going on. Focus for Mars and the moon on Wednesday is on how you think about things. So this really has everything to do with your brain and how your brain works. We talked about the sun's focus. Neptune's focus is on self. So I interpret this a couple of different ways. One, when you sit down to look at your long-term goals, career goals, you want to make sure you're not making past mistakes of overthinking it and kind of killing it, if that makes sense. That's one way of looking at it. The other way I'm looking at it is to really pay attention to when you get into that mental tornado, if that makes sense. And if you are getting into that mental tornado, to stop what you're doing, take some time to meditate, come back to center, and remember that all of this, with Neptune being such a big part of this and focused on self, it's sort of like your overthinking is pushing your intuition out the window, and you definitely don't want to do that. You want to make these decisions that align with your intuition, not fight with your intuition. So make sure that when you get to that place where you start to your mind starts to race and you start to spin, you got to walk away from it, babe. That's all there is to it. You got to walk away from it. You got to get a cup of coffee or some hot chocolate or some tea or whatever the hell you're going to put in that cup. Put liquor in the cup for all I care, and just meditate just let it all go and come back when you're focused, when you're ready to allow your intuition to help you. I kind of feel like what may be causing this is the direction that your intuition is going, and this is something that we all do, and it's a huge mistake every time we do it. Our intuition is directing us into a direction that we don't necessarily want to go, and so we will fight and do anything that we possibly can to find a loophole, Sagittarius, to find a loophole out of what we don't want to do, to veer ourselves into a direction that is more comfortable for us. With that being said, this isn't supposed to be comfortable. So I know you're back from vacation at this point, or just getting back from vacation at this point, and you ready to sit down and get focused on it. And I sort of feel this initial excitement going into it, but it becomes very confusing, and you just want to avoid your old patterns of trying to overcorrect everything when there's no need to do that, if that makes sense. And that overcorrection usually stems from fear. So just be very mindful of when that's coming up. I kind of also see, it's funny, but I'm hearing the words dance it out, and I'm seeing you just dancing around, maybe even dancing around naked, I don't know, in the house, and in some ways that sort of is releasing that pent-up energy, if that makes sense, when you dance it out. So that's what I have for you. Thank you for that visual, appreciate it, and love you. And I'm moving on to my good buddy Sheri. Sun continues to be in Sagittarius in a T-square with Neptune in Pisces, which is focused on self, as well as Mars in Gemini, which is focused on how the mind works, and there is a little bit of focus on the home in there as well. The moon is going to move into conjunction with Mars and join this fantastic challenge for you and make it just a tad more emotional than it was the previous day, about Wednesday. So right in the middle of the week. That just really makes things so much easier, doesn't it? At the same time, though, you kind of sort of work up to it, you get there, and then once you get there, it's all downhill from there. That's how I kind of look at it. The sun's focus is right on long-term career goals, legacy. Neptune's focus, as I said, is on self. And then of course we have that focus of the mind with a little bit of an influence to focus on the home as well, with Mars and the moon on Wednesday. What does this all mean? A T-square is a pretty big challenge. If there was a planet in Virgo, it would be twice the challenge. So let's just be grateful that that's not happening until next week. However, I just have to say that the one thing that comes screaming out of this for me, for you, is that in knowing and loving you as much as I do and have over the past million years now that we've been together, you've always got ideas and things that either you want to do or you could do or whatever, but your mind justifies why you can't do it right now or what have you. And I recall over the years that always being referred to as your laziness. And I don't think it has anything to do with laziness. I think we need to just kick laziness right out of the conversation. I don't think this is laziness. I think this is fear. But laziness is a good excuse, when you want to pull that out of the excuse bag. I suppose I use it a lot too. I think this is fear, and the thing is that I recognize this fear like it's my old friend in a way, and we all do this. This is not a Sheri thing. We all do this. Um, I think that one of the best things about being a Sagittarius is the crazy ideas that you've come up with, such as the family let's all rob a bank for a retirement fund idea. I didn't say that it was a good idea to do. It was but it was a fun, crazy idea. And of course you were going to orchestrate the plan and everybody else was going to carry it out. Not to say that you can't carry it out, but that is what you do. It's who you are. It's why you're put in the position of actually running basically everything right now, because you're the most organized and the best one to do it. But you got to get out of your own way. That's what it comes down to. You can do absolutely anything that you want to do if you just get the hell out of your own way. And that's really what this challenge is about. For you anyways. At least for me it is for you. um if that makes sense. You've always been telling me for years to do the same thing. I kind of all of a sudden just find it funny how neither one of us is really listening to the other one. But we've proven that we can do that and still love each other despite that. So maybe that's the best thing to come out of all this. I don't know. Anyways, I love you to pieces, and I believe that you can do anything that you put your mind to, good or bad, really. And that's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Peg. Hi, Peg. We have the sun continues in Sagittarius. Venus and Mercury move out of Sagittarius this week, so we will see the end of their influence. They're square with Jupiter and Neptune on the way out. Does create a little bit of a challenge in terms of work for you, I feel, this week. Sort of like you really need to expand on your time, but you got too much work getting in the way, kind of a thing. As those two planets move out of your sign and you get towards the end of the week where they're pretty much gone, I think that that's going to free up some time for you, if that makes sense. So, is what we usually wind up dealing with. Most of the work week is spent focused on getting things done, and the weekend is a little bit freer for some Peg time, which is good. The sun continues in Sagittarius. Focus is on your long-term career goals this week. And the sun is in a T-square with Neptune and Jupiter, which is focused on self, as well as Mars and the moon on Wednesday when it joins Mars in a conjunction, which is focused on the mind, how you think about things, and there's a little bit of an influence of focus on the home as well. I kind of see a couple of things coming out of this for you. One, I kind of feel like after everything that you've been through in your career, um, it sort of gets harder and harder to create career goals for the upcoming year, if that makes sense. And I feel that in this type of business that you're in, that I'm in, that tends to happen a lot. When we sort of lose the love for it, it becomes really difficult, and it's almost like crawling towards having to do it, which really takes a lot of the energy of being good at it out of it. Um, and so I kind of feel that coming into play in terms of what kind of goals you want to structure right now. And the moon coming into it may actually cause a situation that would prove that feeling in a way, bringing up something or triggering something that did happen in the past with a client before. So I'm not saying that you're on the fence about whether you want to continue this type of business or not, but I do feel you're kind of on the fence with it, if that makes sense. Which I totally understand. I think what keeps me going is I just don't want to do anything else. And I think that in some cases, you can sort of take that too, if that makes sense. So obviously this decision doesn't have to be made this week. I want to say give yourself some time. I feel it's kind of in the back of your mind a lot, but try and keep it out of the back of your mind when you're not supposed to be focused on it, and just really have a good think about it when you have the time, if that makes sense. That might help you out a little bit more. Definitely don't make decisions based on current feelings. So when you have a situation come up that's uncomfortable, obviously you don't want to base the whole decision of your life on that one instance, if that makes sense. The other thing that I'm kind of picking up is I feel like there's preparations that need to be done in the home, or well, I say spring cleaning. It's really not that time, but there may be something along those lines. And you're just very unmotivated to do it. If that makes sense at all. Um, it is for me. I don't know about you, but I just feel you're very unmotivated to do it. Um, and that's okay too. I'm really kind of picking up, do a little bit at a time. Look at those little eyes, a little bit at a time. It doesn't all have to be done right now, if that makes sense. So, and Emrys obviously popped up to say hello. So that's what I have for you, Peg. And I'm moving on to Mama Sheri. It's the heavy metal psychic and Emrys show for you. He wanted to pop up to say hello. The sun continues to be in Sagittarius this week. Venus and Mercury move out of Sagittarius this week. So by the end of the week, both of them will be gone. We start off the week with both of them there. By the end of the week, they're both moved on somewhere else. And the sun's focus is on long-term career goals in a T-square with Neptune and Jupiter, which is focused on self, and Mars, which is focused on how you think about things. And there's a slight element of focus on the home in there as well. The moon is going to move into conjunction with Mars on Wednesday, joining this challenge, unfortunately, making it a bit of an emotional challenge, which we're all thrilled about, I'm sure. Bottom line with this, and this week really is the end of this T-square. It's going to break up going into next week, and then won't be such a major challenge anymore. Of course, once the sun moves out of Sagittarius, there won't be any challenges anymore. But I kind of feel like there's a couple of different ways that this plays out for you. First of all, I have been seeing you on the fence. You kind of want to get out there and do more classes and readings. You kind of don't. You kind of want to expand. You don't really know what that looks like. There's sort of like this nonchalantness on the surface about it, and yet on the inside, it's just like you have to do this. But there's a part of you that's fighting against doing it. I think we all go through that from time to time. I think loss of people important to us really, I mean, if you're doing this as a business, it's going to affect your business, period. It's just, each one is just harder and harder to recover from, it feels like to me, for whatever reason. And it's not going to slow down. I just kind of came to the conclusion this year that it's not going to stop. It's not going to slow down. This is just what I have to deal with as we get older. That's just more and more of a certainty. It still doesn't make the feeling go away, I guess, if that makes sense. You are supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this. That's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of times where I go, no, fuck that, I don't want to. And then I find myself accepting my fate, I guess. And I've seen you go through that from time to time yourself. I see you going through it now. Coming up with a plan of what that looks like for the next year will help to get you out of that. I'm not sure where I'm going with this kind of attitude or feeling, if that makes sense, for lack of a better word to come up with. So creating goals in terms of what you want to do and what direction you want to go in. And I really think I should do this too. I always tell people to do it and I never do. It's a good first start. Making goals of how many readings you're going to do every month, that aligns with money goals and how much money you want to make, and different things like that. So there's a lot of different variables and things, but ultimately this gives us some sort of control over it when we don't feel we have any control over it. Which is good. I'm seeing group classes again. It's something that I've been thinking about doing a lot myself also. Rather than just individual classes, doing group classes again in some way, shape, or form. I kind of feel like that's been on your mind also. So maybe it would be good to jot that down as something that you may put into your long-term career goals. But I feel like this is it's really necessary to focus on, and the challenges that you have faced every time you've tried to sit down and create career goals are still going to come up, but you just have to overcome them. You have to be bigger than the problem. And that is so not a fat joke. Not that there could be a fat joke in that at all. So with that being said, that is what I have for you. And I love you. And that is what I have for everybody. Thanks for hanging out and listening. Don't forget, you could be on this list for as low as $10 a month. Click the link below and it'll take you to my membership, where you can see all the different membership options and all the things that the membership provides for you. Again, I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to make it a great week, everybody.